Welcome to the show, everybody. This is the Straight No Chaser podcast, where we talk about human freedom through money, technology, economics, and philosophy. Today, we travel overseas to the UK. We chat to a group of guys collectively called Bridge to Bitcoin. These guys are absolutely blazing trails in the UK by onboarding local UK businesses into accepting Bitcoin payments. Where this is different to how, for example, the Money Badger guys in South Africa are doing things, is that Bridge to Bitcoin are basically using native Bitcoin software for their clients or businesses to receive Bitcoin directly. It is very cool. This podcast is slightly longer than normal. I was warned at the start that if unrestrained, we could go on forever. I think you guys will like this one. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Today we are joined by the Bridge to Bitcoin guys in the UK who are here to talk about life in the UK, retail space in the UK, property politics in the UK, possibly some conferences that might be coming up, and just a little bit about life in the UK in general. So Simon, James, Chris, welcome to the podcast. Happy to have you guys here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gavin. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast. Thank you.
So I would just like to start off by saying you guys seem to be a force to deal with as far as onboarding merchants in the UK. I think that's how I first came across you guys on Twitter. And I think there was an announcement every other day. Hey, we've got a new business. They're located here. This is what they do. They're now taking Bitcoin. So first off, what is it that is suddenly getting UK merchants on board?
Interesting. That's an interesting starting point. I'm gonna counter that, and I'm gonna say I don't think UK merchants are suddenly getting on board. I think it's a slow burn. I think we're very much still at the early stages of Bitcoin. So sorry to quash any sort of enthusiasm that people might have about Bitcoin about to hit a sort of turning point, but I think we're still really early. I think we're still at the early adopter stages and maybe even earlier. So when we speak to business owners, if we're speaking to certainly laggards or even the majority of business owners or even early adopters, a lot of them, although they might get what we're trying to do, they won't do it because of their psychological makeup. So we're very much looking for early adopters in the space. So I don't think there's a huge take up at the moment, but that doesn't stop us from going out there and trying to find those business owners who want to find something different to help their business, to drive some additional footfall and additional revenue towards their businesses. I don't know if you want to counter that, James or Simon.
No, I mean, I broadly agree with what you're saying there. I mean, when we started 3 years ago, I think we had something like 30 to 35 businesses in the UK that we could identify as taking Bitcoin. Today, we're up somewhere in the 450 to 500. So that sounds good, significant progress, but it's a bit like this thing when they talk about Bitcoin as a store of value on the macro side, and they put up this little graph, the sort of area graph, and you see this tiny little square of Bitcoin in the background, whatever it is, 2.3 trillion or whatever, and it's like tiny little against all the bonds and the stocks and gold and everything else, and it's still like that. So it's still very small relative to the size of the addressable market, which is, well, for us, the Bridge to Bitcoin at this stage, it's small independent businesses. As you say, I working in retail, because again, if it's a business to business, it might be small, but business to business, you need another business that's accepting Bitcoin in order to buy off you in Bitcoin. So the whole it's very much retail facing small businesses. And it's the kind of backbone of any economy, that. But it's, we're nowhere near the medium-sized businesses or the large businesses. So, whilst I have bought a burger for a McDonald's burger for Bitcoin, that was in Lugano in Switzerland. There are no branches of McDonald's in the UK taking Bitcoin, for instance. So, and we've got no Steak and Shakes in the UK either. So again, quite a medium-sized chain in the US taking Bitcoin now, but we don't have any branches of it. So, so yeah, I pretty much agree with what Chris was saying, to be honest. Just chuck in a couple of extra perspectives and some numbers. We've made progress, but it's still tiny. Yeah.
I think the bulk of what we've onboarded so far have been in some way either connected to a Bitcoiner, or particularly open-minded business owners that are like Chris said, looking for something new, looking for a different edge, different way to get businesses. But there's I'd say 30-40% of the businesses are probably in some way connected to a Bitcoiner, owned by a Bitcoiner, or their aunties or uncles or parents or something, and they've not pressured them, but persuaded them maybe that accepting Bitcoin would be a good idea. So there is a percentage of that, but and the rest will just be open-minded people that are the early adopters.
Or I would go even further and say we're actually looking for innovators still in the space. If we're looking at the option curve, very much, I feel that we're in the innovator stage still. So yeah, there's a tiny segment of society who are going to get it and who are going to start using it. So yeah, sorry, a bit of a downer for the beginning of the podcast, Gavin. Apologies.
Oh, not at all. I think it's a great kickoff. In fact, my very next question is, tell me about the demographic of your early adopter and your innovator. Is it a younger crowd? Is it an older crowd? Is it the middle-aged person? Who can you look at a crowd and point to that guy and say that's the early adopter in the crowd? Or have you got absolutely no way of knowing?
I would go with the latter. They could be young, they could be older. It's all about their psychological makeup. Are they an innovator? And innovators can be young people, they can be older people. And we've exhibited at trade shows, at normie trade shows, so to speak. So hospitality and hotel and pub trade shows. And we've spoken to old business owners and young business owners across the spectrum. You can't tell. The only way you can tell is when they come and speak to you and they do lots of different things. They try lots of different things, and that's a classic innovator trait. They're willing to have a go at something, and if it doesn't work, they just pivot or they just drop it. And that's what we see with those who are new to Bitcoin, who want to accept Bitcoin at their business. They will hear our pitch and they go, oh, okay, well, there's nothing to lose. Yeah, I'll give it a go. Doesn't cost me anything. You guys will handhold me through the setup process. And you'll drive additional footfall and additional customers, this new customer base to my business. And we'll say, yeah, we'll try. And if we do, great. Hasn't cost you anything. So your ROI is infinity. Because as soon as you get that one customer through the door, spend something, hasn't cost you anything. So your ROI is infinity. But on the other side, if you don't get a Bitcoin customer, hasn't cost you anything. There's no capital outlay. In the vast majority of cases, you can use hardware that you've already got, and the 98% of the software that you can use is free and open source. It's FOSS, so it doesn't cost you anything. So you haven't lost anything. Maybe an hour chat with us at max, but often that's a really good conversation. I'm biased, but it's a great conversation because we don't only put in place a system for them, but we talk about macroeconomics and we have a great chat about the state of the world and the state of the UK as well. So they'll just, the only thing they lose is a conversation with us, which I would say is still a huge upside.
So, I mean, it sounds to me like your small retail store owner is probably your entrepreneurial, innovative type of guy anyway, because to open a small business is really difficult from scratch, unless you've inherited from someone. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the UK market at all.
No.
James is shaking his head. Come, James, tell me where I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's not true. So the psychology of business owners is very, very similar to the psychology of the population at large, if you profiled them, right? There are opening a shop, right? Opening a retail shop is not an innovative thing to do. I mean, it is an entrepreneur thing to do. Yeah, you've got to go and get capital, you've got to organise stuff, you've got to do it. But the model is well understood. I mean, there have been market stalls and shops for thousands of years. Right? It's not new. So I don't regard that as innovative in the way that we mean. Yeah, what we mean is people who are doing new things in an existing space. So the existing space is running a store, and there are as many laggards and late adopters who run businesses like that as there are, well, far more of those, in fact, than there are innovators running businesses like that. In fact, if anything, innovators probably do that kind of stuff less, simply because it's a kind of known quantity. It's not exciting. What would an innovator be doing setting up a store? Now, actually, what happens is that some people don't even know that they're innovators or the early adopters. They don't even realize, and they just happen to that just be what they've done. They've just set up a store, but they behave like that. And so you do get some, but it certainly wouldn't, an innovator wouldn't immediately think, what should I do with my life? I know I'll open a shop. It's not, it doesn't really fit with that psychology. The other thing I would say is rather than retail stores, what we find is that hospitality spaces are better. And we've certainly had more success there. And that's because I think the market, so the Bitcoiners who are going to come and spend their Bitcoin, prefer to go to a pub, to a cafe, to a restaurant, maybe choose a hotel to stay in, go for dinner somewhere. It's a kind of, and maybe meet other Bitcoiners in the process, maybe in a Bitcoin meetup or something. And Simon can talk in a moment about Bitcoin events and all of the meetups around the UK and how much that's grown as well. So if you think about driving revenue, one of the most successful areas that's probably happened has been in hospitality, I would say. So small retail hospitality, so individual pubs and individual restaurants, individual cafes, that sort of thing. I know what do you think, guys?
Well, sorry, I think I probably phrased it badly. Innovative was really not the way I should have said it, but maybe someone who's prepared to have a go at it, I should have said. Someone who owns a store, at least they're going to give it a crack and see what happens, which is interesting for someone who's going to try something new as well. Let's just give it a crack and see what happens. Has there been any interest whatsoever? As far as corporate UK goes, or are you just really focused at hospitality, retail, smaller business?
I think,
or do you kick that onto somebody else who deals with that?
Well, I think sort of linking to what James was saying, I think we have the most success in the hospitality space with Bridge to Bitcoin, because what we do is as I insinuated earlier, we will onboard merchants for free, so it doesn't cost them anything, so there's only upside. And then through another entity that Simon started up called Bitcoin Events UK, check them out on their website, sign up for their weekly newsletter. We are connected to the UK meetup scene. So that is essentially your customer base. And so when we onboard a hospitality business, like a pub, like a coffee shop, like a restaurant, we can drive a local meetup group towards that hospitality business. So that local meetup might go, we'll now start having our meetup at that pub because they accept Bitcoin payments, or we'll alternate with another Bitcoin accepting business. So we have greater success, if you like, with driving footfall to hospitality businesses. But what I would say is if you have a look on our Twitter feed and our Instagram and our Nostr feed, so at Bridge, the number 2 Bitcoin, if you have a look at the businesses we're onboarding, the businesses are across the UK space. They're not just hospitality. And that sort of links into what we were saying in terms of we're looking for innovators. So innovators exist in all industries. So I think I recently tweeted about Frank, as a psychologist over in Ireland. We've got a whole load of, we've got a sculptor. So she does head busts. So maybe someone wants a bust of Hal Finney. I don't know, whatever they want. So there's a huge range of business owners or out there who we onboard. But yeah, I think we as a bridge to Bitcoin entity, we have greater success in the hospitality industry. Now, having said that, there are separate entities that we're involved in. So you mentioned corporate, Gavin. So I'll hand the mic over to James for that. And also maybe, James, you can talk about sort of charities and not-for-profits as well. So it's a slightly different pitch and a slightly different angle. So yeah, I'll hand the mic over to James now.
Yeah, so the thing is that our pitch with Bridge to Bitcoin is about revenue driving in revenue from retail customers. So it's accept Bitcoin payments and you'll get more footfall, right? And it costs you nothing to do. As Chris said before, if you don't get anything, you've made no loss. If you get something, it's all on the bottom line, basically, apart from your variable costs. So that's great, but that doesn't work with medium and large-sized organisations. So take a big supermarket chain in the UK like Sainsbury's. I don't know if that name's familiar to you, Gavin, or Tesco. They are not going to implement. I mean, apart from the fact that they both have banks inside their supermarket group, right? They even have credit cards and banks inside. They're that big. Just put that bit to us one side a moment. Just even on their main business of being supermarkets, they don't. First of all, they've got very, very slick, sort of highly cost-effective payment systems. You know, they can negotiate the best rates from all the payment processors and the credit card providers, and they run their own banking. So they're not. There's not much cost saving for them in payments by moving to Bitcoin. They don't have hundreds of customers complaining every week that they don't take Bitcoin. What are you doing? You know, why haven't you doing it yet? So, and they're not going to really drive much additional revenue by taking Bitcoin. Okay, sure. Maybe some Bitcoiners might switch from Sainsbury's to Tesco's if Tesco's started taking Bitcoin. I would, but you're not even going to see it in their sales revenue, right? It'll be so tiny that it'll be completely irrelevant. So, on top of that, simply their internal project costs and program costs and the decision-making process to actually achieve that implementation would be enormous in such a large business. Okay, never mind the training of the staff and the rollout. I mean, an enormous program of change so there would be cost for them, even if the actual tech they were bringing in was essentially free, right?
Yeah.
There would be cost, right? With corporations and medium-sized businesses, one day they will respond because it'll be a hygiene factor. Okay, they'll get a bit like businesses when American Express first came to the UK. They wouldn't accept it because they charge quite high fees. I remember I was quite an early adopter of Amex as a consumer because they paid me good cash back, so I'd use it wherever I could. But Marks and Spencer refused to take it. John Lewis and Waitrose refused to take it. So these are big supermarkets and department stores in the UK. But gradually, people like me turning up and going, oh, yeah, so you don't take Amex, do you? Like moaning, right? As Amex built the retail, people like me owning the card, we'd go and moan. And then eventually the Marks and Spencer start accepting it. And then also you say to John Lewis and Waitrose. So that's the way that you break into that market. And the reason why I accept that payment was that their customers were hassling them about not taking their method of payment, right? So they basically went to Amex and said, okay, yeah, well, let's sit down. We want to take it now, but we want you to get pretty sharp on the fees, but they ended up paying them more so that Amex could carry on paying me cashback. So what Amex did very cleverly was use their new customers of their credit card in the UK as the pressure on the larger businesses to pay the higher fees so that they could pay me the cash back. That's how they built their market share in the UK. Yeah, great strategy. It worked. Payment processing, though, is a tiny, for a large corporate. I mean, maybe it's more for something like Sainsbury's or Tesco, but large corporates across all sorts of businesses. Many of them are not mainly customer facing. Some are a mix. You know, maybe they're business to business, maybe they're developing software. You know, I mean, think about maybe they're manufacturing cars. I mean, there are lots and lots of big businesses. The way that Bitcoin is going to affect and change those businesses is not primarily with them accepting it. Right? They're not. That might be something that happens down the line. Well, I think it will be if they're still around. But accepting Bitcoin is just one tactic. Right? It's just one thing that you can do as a business to take advantage of potential, see if there's an advantage for you as this technology develops. But there are countless potential things that you could do in terms of the impact on what risks this technology poses to your existing business. So if you think about it from a C-suite strategic risk perspective, think about something like the impact that the internet had on every business in the world, large, small, medium, actually particularly the bigger ones, in fact, here. Because if you're running a restaurant, it's probably not okay now you have to deal with Uber Eats and and all the rest of it. It's slightly changed in recent years, though, more with the mobile wave than the sort of core internet. It's mainly affected at the high end. Some businesses don't exist anymore, and other businesses are like in the top businesses of the world and didn't exist then, right? So if you're a big corporate or even a medium-sized organization, really what you should be looking at as Bitcoin is a risk. It's a technology risk that poses operational risks, yes, but most importantly, I would say strategic risks. And so the key message for corporations, and this is large organizations of all kinds, whether they're charities, non-profits, and even governments and government institutions, is what's the risk that this thing carries on doing what it's doing, carries on growing, carries on gaining in terms of overall store of value, gradually more and more businesses are using it as payments, more and more people are offering it to pay. What's the impact on our products? What products do we produce? What's our, what are our channels to market? Who are our markets? How could the rise of Bitcoin change the demographic profile of our customer bases around the world? Will it be different in different parts of the world, or will it just happen across the world in the same way? Basically, the answer is you need to put Bitcoin onto your risk register. You need to have a couple of people in your business who have been trained and understand or are learning about Bitcoin so that they can then evaluate the risks for your business, both strategic and operational. And you can then decide what you think the likelihood of that is, what you think the timeframes of that are, and then you can start to develop ideas to mitigate any threats that you might observe and to exploit any opportunities that you might see opening up. So I'll give you an example. If you're a luxury brand, LVMH, biggest luxury brand corporate in the world, what if there's this growing demographic of people who are outperforming their peers in terms of their wealth because they're Bitcoiners, right? So you've got this new emergent demographic across the world who are going to be a larger than you would have otherwise expected without Bitcoin slice of your future market. What might you do? Well, you might create Bitcoin luxury brands, or you might promote your existing brands to Bitcoin. I mean, that's what I mean. Do you see? It's kind of about it's much bigger strategic thinking than, oh yeah, LVMH, let's sell perfume for Bitcoin. Like, you might do that, but it's a much more operational thing. You might choose to do that. That might complement something that you're doing at the strategic level. So you see this market thing happening, or that might happen, and you plan to exploit it by building luxury products for this future demographic, but starting to do it today and starting to communicate it today. And then you might bolster that by selling stuff for Bitcoin as well. But selling stuff for Bitcoin isn't the strategy. It's just an operational bolt-on, if you like. Anyway, I've probably spoken enough there, but do you see the difference between the corporates and even the middle tier and just your mom and pop restaurant? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the big word compliance comes to mind as well. That big, mighty bureaucratic process. Smaller companies, your local coffee shop, probably not too bothered about compliance. It's not front of mind all the time, but I think the large corporates, they probably have entire departments that do nothing but compliance. So I'm sure there's a whole other thing over there.
And they have, because it's part of their compliance framework, their governance framework, they have risk registers. In fact, if you go and look at the report and accounts of, I did a bit of research on FTSE 100 from 2024, their 2024 report and accounts, all 100 businesses, and you look at the risk pages, it's usually 5 to 10% of the pages in their 300 to 400 page annual report and accounts. It's 5 to 10% of that is about risk, right? And that is a compliance feature, because they have a duty on behalf of their shareholders to ensure that they're not all just going to lose their money in a year or two because they've not kept their eye on the horizon of what's happening in any kind of new industry. Or usually it's started developments in their industry, but there could be developments outside their industry that could come in and affect it. In this case, something like Bitcoin. So yeah, it is compliance driven, and that's why you come in at the top level with a compliance risk, rather than knock on the door and go, who deals with payments in this business of 20,000 people? You don't come in with the answer, you come in with the problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's compliance, awesome. Gavin, that happens at a small level, as in at the mom and pop businesses, but it happens in someone's head, in the business owner's head. So it still happens, but because the business is so small, he doesn't actually have a physical risk register where he writes stuff down. He just goes, I need to do that. Otherwise my business is going to fail. His
duty is to himself and his family, and that's it. Yeah. You've got no public duty. Yeah.
Yeah. So the compliance, if you think of it, still exists. It's just a much smaller process. And that's one of the big differences when we speak to mom and pop businesses or small businesses, is that the governance and the decision making is all shrunk right down. So we can have those conversations really quickly, and those decisions can be made immediately. Like, will you take Bitcoin? What are the risks? What are the opportunities? Oh, okay. After 10 minutes, they're like, yeah, it's a huge opportunity. I'll do it. Whereas if you were to do that with a corporation, as both you and James have said, there's departments to run through, and it's a much bigger process to go through. So fascinating.
So you want to come in from the top, because trying to work you out from the bottom, you're going to get nowhere. And it's not the right approach. I mean, it's just simply not the right approach to come into a large corporate and think that you somehow know that your idea of accepting Bitcoin, or I'd even go as far as putting Bitcoin in your treasury, that as some punter that you're going to advise this business that's the right thing for them to do. I mean, it might well turn out to be, but they need to make that decision from the top and understand why they've decided that they're going to accept Bitcoin, why they've decided they're going to put it in their treasury, why they're going to do this, why they're going to develop this new range of brands, why they're going to open up new channels. They have to kind of understand, because they know their businesses better than anyone knocking on the door trying to sell them some answer. And that's the big ticket item, is that these big businesses are hugely complex. And if people outside that aren't humble enough to understand that they cannot produce the advice of the solution, but they can, if they've thought this through, go in at the top level to the C-suite and go, guys, I think there's a big risk here that might be on the horizon. You've not got on your risk register, right? Let me come and talk to you for an hour, and then all you need to do is put it on the register, educate a couple of staff, one in risk, one in finance. Anyone puts their hands up, you might find you've got a Bitcoiner in your business who's really happy to do it, already knows, right? And then just give them the job of evaluating that risk on behalf of the company and reporting back to the board. The company will do it inside itself if they've put it in at the top. They have to. It's their fiduciary duty. They can't not do it.
Yeah, well, that's brilliant. So if we swing it all the other way to the other side of the scale and go down to grassroots level, Simon, this is probably more up your alley. The meetup, the Mighty Bitcoin meetup. I mean, it sounds like you guys are smashing it at the park over there as well. So what is happening in meetup space, Bitcoin meetup space in the UK?
So sort of, take it back to when the three of us met. I think it was kind of like three things. It was a perfect storm at the time. Lightning was really beginning to become a seriously usable technology. We'd just come out of COVID, and I think a lot of people, after being locked up inside and not being let out, wanted to get out and meet other people, other Bitcoiners, like-minded individuals, and that sort of thing. So I certainly wanted to do that and started my own local meetup. I realized there wasn't anywhere to list it in the UK, like a Bitcoin only website. So I started bitcoinevents.uk. I listed all of the existing meetups that there was at the time. There was about 10 in the UK, and I listed all of them and invited all of the meetup organizers into a Telegram group. And then through encouragement and persuasion and just generally a bit more visibility on the meetup space, the meetups began to grow. There was times where we'd have one or two a week were popping up, new ones. And yeah, now we have there's just over 60 meetups. Not all of them are totally active each month, but around probably 45, 50 are. And so James, Chris, and I met in 2022, just when Lightning was beginning to kick off and the meetup scene was beginning to grow. And what kind of brought it all together in a way was the realization of what we've talked about, that to help with leverage of onboarding businesses, if we have that deep connection with the Bitcoin community and the meetup scene, we can drive the Bitcoiners to the businesses. So if you're a local baker and you accept Bitcoin, and we've got 30 guys in the Bitcoin meetup, we can drive them to that baker, and instead of using somewhere else to get their bread, they'll use that particular baker. So it's great leverage for those businesses to say, okay, yeah, we'll accept Bitcoin. And so all those things sort of came together at the right time. We've been successful at it, I think, because we have good complementary skills between the three of us, and that connection to the community, I suppose, is really very important. I write a newsletter now as well, which comes out every Sunday morning, and it's kind of a rundown of the week ahead of what's going on. So kind of it gives the community something to a full awareness of what's going on. So if there's a meetup you're unaware of, or you find you've got a Sunday afternoon free, you can drive over to a different one that you've maybe not been to before. And it's a growing scene, a growing community, in that everyone's families are even becoming friends, wives, children are becoming friends within this community, and it's really important, I think, that any movement like this, I think, is really reliant on the people. As I think the saying goes, without the people, that Bitcoin is just code. It's not. It really strongly relies on people and it being a community, and all sorts of things then can grow out of that, with art and music and all sorts of things. So yeah, it's an important time.
Do you find you get questions about other cryptocurrencies? Is there a clear, hard, fast rule, like right up front, where this is Bitcoin only, anything else can get the hell out of here? Or do you point them to the local scam artist down the road and say he'll help you out if you want some of that? Or how do you set the ground rules from the beginning?
Well, the important thing is, and this is where I think Bitcoin Events UK comes in, is that I will only list meetups where the organizers are strongly Bitcoin focused, or not strongly, but they are only focused on Bitcoin. So it's a curated list of meetups. That was important to start with. It's less, it's still important, but it was more difficult when I didn't know the people. Perhaps I was dealing with to bring in and list on the website. Now, I suppose the web of trust has reached the point now where everyone is a sound Bitcoiner, and then it's up to you do get people that come to meetups which are obviously just interested in crypto. That's there. A lot of people that are new come in and they don't understand why it should be Bitcoin only. But as long as the meetup itself is focused on Bitcoin and not having talks about other currencies and that kind of rubbish, they get filtered, and they realize through conversation on the edges of there's a big group of people talking, and they come in and start talking about various shit coins. Then they get the mood, they get the pushback from the other members because it is Bitcoin focused. So it's having that strong core with the meetup organizers, which is the most important. That filters out then.
And the same applies to businesses, Gavin. So with our Bridge to Bitcoin hats on, and also if we speak to charities and non-profits, it's definitely Bitcoin only. Out of the three of us, I've probably had the most scammiest history in terms of the biggest journey. So I took that horseshoe journey through the Bitcoin space. I came across Bitcoin in 2017 and immediately thought, oh, this is really interesting. I like the look of this. Then I put my hands up and I immediately then went, but look at all these other shiny coins. And like a greedy magpie, I went, oh, look, they're promising me returns of 10x, 100x, 1000x. How could I possibly ignore them? And so I took that horseshoe journey through the space and met a number of founders of cryptocurrency firms, and even was invited to be on the board of a couple of them. But I always had the same conversation with these cryptocurrency firms. The pitch was always the same. And at the end of our Zoom calls, I would always say, okay, that's a really interesting pitch, a really interesting coin or token you've got there. Why don't you just accept pounds or Bitcoin? And the answer was always different, but the underlying answer was always the same. And the underlying answer was always that they wanted to essentially trap their customers' money into a walled garden where they can't move that money anywhere else. And that's why I and others often refer to cryptocurrencies as fairground tokens. They're literally fairground tokens. They've got no utility elsewhere, whereas Bitcoin is completely the opposite, as you know, Gavin, and I'm sure the other podcast listeners know. So, yeah, when it comes to businesses, we explain, no, it's Bitcoin only because of the fundamentals of Bitcoin. The other coins are essentially just fairground tokens. Bitcoin's the only one that is, well, there is no second best, to quote a famous Bitcoiner in the space. So yeah, we're strictly Bitcoin. We explain it in gentle terms, hopefully, so we don't scare people off, so we don't come across as maxis. So our intention isn't to sort of push Bitcoin down people's throats, but rather to show them how good Bitcoin is and how other currencies are not good, if you like. One of my taglines is normalize, don't evangelize Bitcoin. So Bitcoiners are famous for being evangelistic about Bitcoin, understandably. But what I find is that often scares people away, because most people's journey through the space is they come across Bitcoin, their eyes are suddenly opened and they want to tell everyone about it. And then you just turn into a lunatic maxi and everyone goes, oh, here comes Chris again talking about Bitcoin. He's another harebrained idea. So we're just trying to turn it down a bit and just make it normal. Again, as James said earlier, he'll use his corporate language, talk about them putting on their risk register, rather than going, it's going to change the world, it's going to stop wars, it's fundamentally going to change how people behave, which we think it probably will. But let's not start off with that within the first 5 minutes of meeting someone, because it's just going to scare them off and everyone thinks you're a lunatic. We've all been through that. So yeah, we just try and turn down the dial a little bit. And you'll notice with the pitch with Bridge to Bitcoin, so we haven't outwardly said it, but our pitch with Bridge to Bitcoin is not about orange pilling business owners. I just want to emphasize it. What we do is our pitches will drive additional footfall and additional revenue to your business if you use this payment rail and if you accept this currency. They don't have to be a Bitcoiner. The business owner does not have to be a Bitcoiner. All they have to be is a business owner who's just looking for more footfall towards their business. Now, if they're not interested in Bitcoin, they can just convert that Bitcoin at point of sale into their local currency if they want. But they might, after a conversation with us, realize, oh, actually, well, it's an interesting asset. Maybe I'll just hold on to it anyway, because it's only going to be a small proportion of my income anyway, or my sales anyway. So maybe we'll just hold on to it rather than convert it. But the point is, they don't need to be a Bitcoiner. They're just a business owner that's interested in this new customer base, this additional footfall. And that's what pretty much all business owners are interested in. They just want more sales, don't you? And that's what we promise. So we don't, or not promise rather, that's what we hope to do. So it's not about orange pilling business owners. You might say it's a Trojan horse, because what we do is hopefully drive Bitcoiners to that business, and those business owners will learn more about Bitcoin. And this is one of the really important bits for me, is that it almost makes Bitcoin tangible. It's as close as to being tangible it can be for business owners, because they'll see Bitcoin coming into their business on their CSV files, when they can download all the sales, and it looks that CSV file looks just like the sales on the CSV file for pounds or whatever the currency might be. It's just that I have a CSV file for Bitcoin sales. So it's as close as it can be to tangible, and they're seeing it's making a difference rather. And when people see Bitcoin being transacted in real life, i.e. on a point of sale machine and someone using their phone to pay, it suddenly brings it to life. So yeah, some people might say it's a bit of a Trojan horse, and that's often what we see. And I'll use the example of James onboarding a local pub to him. So he onboarded a local pub. The business owner initially was not interested until James told him that he doesn't have to keep it, he can flip it. And he got it. He went, oh, okay, then so it is just more footfall. He went, yeah. So James onboarded that local pub. That pub owner happened to have two pubs at the time. So there was another one in London in Chiswick. So I used to live in Chiswick. So James invited me along to that one. Said, oh, do you want to go down to your old haunting ground? I said, oh, yeah, I'll pop along. That was literally my local pub, about 200 yards from where I lived. So I said, yeah, I'll go along. And whilst we were putting in place a point of sale machine, I think we put in place a Bitcoinized machine, didn't we, James? Yeah. Whilst we were putting that in place and making sure it was all set up and they were happy with it, the pub owner came up to us and he said, James, you know how at my other pub that the Bitcoin's being converted into GBP? We said, yeah. Is there any chance at this pub we can just keep the Bitcoin? And bear in mind, we hadn't tried to pitch Bitcoin. There'd been no orange pilling whatsoever. So what's happened is he'd had some Bitcoiners come along to his pub. Maybe he's done some learning himself, but he essentially seen Bitcoin for himself come into his business. And the orange pilling had been an organic, natural process. And I think there's a lot of power in that, rather than us being evangelistic and trying to shove it down people's throats. When small business owners see it coming into their business, and they get Bitcoiners come in who are the best salesmen for their business, I'll just add, because the catchment area for Bitcoiners is enormous. So Bitcoiners will travel far and wide to support a Bitcoin business. Like, people will drive an hour and a half, 2 hours to go and buy cake and a cup of tea at a cafe. We've been at a restaurant in South London for a meetup, a Bitcoin event, and an American's walked through the door who happened to be a Bitcoiner. And we got chatting. We said, oh, how did you hear about this event? He said, well, I looked at btcmap.org and I saw this pub, this restaurant accepted Bitcoin. And then I saw there was an event. So I come along. He was in London on business, not in the area that the restaurant was. He'd chosen to travel past scores and scores of other pubs and restaurants just to get to this restaurant we were at because it accepts Bitcoin. And I call that the Tesla effect in so much. if a pub owner were to put in place a Tesla charging unit in the car park, what normally happens is Tesla drivers stop off at the pub to charge their car and have lunch while the car's charging, or have a drink. The only reason that Tesla driver has stopped off at the pub is because there's a Tesla charging unit, not because it's got great reviews on TripAdvisor or Google reviews, because it's got a Tesla charging unit. It's the same with accepting Bitcoin payments. You put in place a Bitcoin payment rail, Bitcoin customers will come. You don't have to be a Bitcoiner, like you don't have to be a Tesla driver to put in place a Tesla charging station at your pub or restaurant, but they will come. And it doesn't apply. It's not just hospitality, I'll add. So we've onboarded, as I said earlier on the pod, a psychologist, an art gallery as well in northwest London. So you could be any business, and hopefully you'll attract that additional footfall and additional revenue. And it's a wonderful thing to see, because you get business owners who the orange pill slowly drops, if you like. It's fascinating to see. And also local Bitcoiners love it to tie into what Simon was saying, because they've got a local business that they can support. And ultimately, that's why we do what we do at Bridge to Bitcoin. We want to live on a Bitcoin circular economy. We want to use Bitcoin for as we think it was intended, i.e. peer-to-peer money. So it's the step beyond it being a store of value. So yeah, it's a great store of value, but it's also a money. And for whatever reason, I think sometimes that's quite a big psychological jump for some people. They get stuck on this. Well, it's the best appreciating asset. Why would I spend it? You're not spending it, you're using it instead of using fiat. So I would say that fiat is just like any other cryptocurrency. I won't swear because I don't know what your policy is on your pod, but it's like any other cryptocurrency. You know, if I went to a pub that accepts Bitcoin and I then paid in fiat, for me that's a bit like a kick in the balls to that pub owner. I say, I'd be like, oh, you accept Bitcoin, great. Here's a cryptocurrency instead. Just like,
here's my MasterCard. Take 3% of that.
Yeah. But it's, he's still winning because he's still getting extra revenue and an extra business. But the icing on the cake is that he's getting Bitcoin from a Bitcoiner, and we're creating that circular economy. We're adding to the liquidity of the Lightning and the Bitcoin network. And for me, the more we do that, the stronger that makes Bitcoin, both as a technology, as a money, and also as a community, a global community. I'm going to stop rambling on now.
Yeah, I mean, that's brilliant. I think the Americans call it value for value. And I think that's pretty much how I'm hearing how you describe it, where you help somebody else, you offer them a solution for their business, something that'll help them. Yeah, like your Tesla effect, as you said, something that'll draw the person there. They'll probably go out of their way, something that they want to do. The store owner benefits out of it. It hasn't cost anybody anything. And it's pulling people towards each other instead of you hammering them on the head with your orange bat about end the war, change the world, save the cheerleader, or whatever that movie was. I can't remember. Heroes, I think it was. So with this massive, you guys have got meetups, you've got sort of engagement with corporates, you're dealing with smaller retail guys. Before we hit the record button, somebody mentioned a Labour Party conference. I couldn't imagine anything further away from the Bitcoin sphere, but there's got to be a story. So tell me about that one.
Who got to it first, Chris? I can't. Did Susie, who's the CEO, I think she just emailed us, did she? And said,
yeah, Susie reached out to us. Yeah.
So Susie Violet Ward is the CEO of Bitcoin Policy UK, which is a think tank and lobby group in the UK. I mean, I'd like to say similar, mirrors the Bitcoin Policy Institute in Washington, but as with everything between the UK and America, we're always kind of, and this is nothing personal against Susie or Freddie New, but we're always just slightly behind the curve, on these things. So, but they imagine them in that role as Bitcoin Policy Institute, but in the UK. And they have decided, going to the Labour Party, who are currently in government in the UK, their party conference in a couple of weeks in Liverpool. And they've got a sort of exhibition centre next to the conference centre. They're sort of connected, and they've got a stand there. And they just wrote to us and said that we're looking for people that we regard as knowledgeable volunteers or whatever to come and help us man the stand over the period of the conference. And would you be happy to participate? So yeah, fantastic. So yeah, Chris and I have volunteered. Looking forward to doing it.
We'll excuse Simon because Simon's travelling with his family. He's escaped the fiat train, if you like, and he's now on the Bitcoin train around the world. But yeah, I'd like to shout out Bitcoin Policy UK because they do fantastic work. It's work that I ordinarily wouldn't do, but Susie did reach out, so I thought we should do our bit. But yeah, my hat's off to all of the Bitcoin Policy UK crew, Freddie, Susie, and the rest of the team, because it's possibly one of the hardest jobs in the Bitcoin space in terms of speaking to alleged policymakers and decision makers in government. Having worked at one point in my life in the civil service, I know how treacly it can be in terms of trying to affect change and trying to get things done. And it's, just watching from where I am, it's just painful. And I personally would find it really hard emotionally and psychologically to do what they're doing day in and day out. So if you're in the UK or anywhere in the globe and you want to support them, check out Bitcoin Policy UK. I think they've got a Lightning address if you want to send some donations to try and help them further the cause with educating the UK government and ministers and so on. I don't know when we'll get there, but yeah, the guys are commendable with their efforts. So we're going along to support them and see what we can do to try and educate people about Bitcoin at the Labour Party conference. Who knows how we'll get on? For me, I'm looking at a bit like a hospitality trade show, just slightly different customers, if you like, at this show. So similar setup in my head is how I'm framing it. But yeah, it should be fun. We'll get to speak to other Bitcoiners as well as hopefully educate some people about Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, very much the same. I thoroughly applaud all the guys at Bitcoin Policy UK for what they do. And just as Chris, exactly the same as Chris, I literally couldn't do it. I mean, it would kill me to do a job like that. And so I have utmost respect for them, and I'm willing to help. I pay my whatever it is, however many sats it is a year to support them. Because they've got to have some funds to do something. I mean, they don't. As far as I know, none of them take any salaries. Their time is all kind of pro bono, but there are inevitably expenses incurred. But but to go up there for 3 days, I've never been to a political party conference. I don't personally see that Bitcoin's success or failure is going to have anything to do with any politician on the planet. On the other hand, if we could, have some influence on our government and our politicians in terms of making them aware of this technology, much as I was saying before about corporates, they could maybe make some few decisions slightly differently from the ones that they would otherwise take on a risk-based analysis, or thinking, well, hang on, this thing's coming down the line. Is it going to start thinking, well, is it going to happen or not? I mean, if it's going to happen, well, perhaps we should develop policies, not necessarily telling them exactly what they should do, but trying to make them start thinking about it. If we can have some impact on that, it's more of as educators than political advisors. We're just trying to kind of open people's eyes to what's going on and suggest that they maybe take a look. I mean, it's not really rocket science. It's just talking to people. And I believe that really Bitcoin succeeds and is succeeding. In the end, it's all from the bottom up, right? It's all from the ground up, because it's value. Value is something that only human beings can give to something, right? So if you take the human beings out of it, I think, as Simon said earlier, there's nothing there. And that's not only true of Bitcoin, that's true of literally everything. And so the closest physical peer of Bitcoin might be gold. Well, if there were no humans around, all the gold that we've currently got lying above ground would still be bound in rocks in the Earth's crust, right? It's only humans that valued it and therefore wasted well, it wasn't a waste as it turns out, but spent huge amounts of their time mining gold and refining it over centuries to produce all the gold that we've got above ground today. So somebody valued it, and humans to value something goes away. In a way, corporations don't value anything; their shareholders do, and their customers do. Hopefully, the products and services that the corporation sells them. So in the end, all value stems from humans, and so it seems to me that logically it can only come from the bottom up. Now, yeah, there'll be groups of people, there'll be businesses that get hold of it, there'll be some governments who are ahead of others, some institutions ahead of others, and the humans come together to recognise something, and then they start to act in their interests or the interests of their stakeholders to address this technology. But ultimately, it's coming from individual humans valuing this thing. That's really what it's all about. So yeah, I struggle. I'd really struggle personally to focus all of my energy on the top down stuff, because that's not where it's going to happen. It's in my view.
I can't personally think of anywhere worse. I'd rather be least than a Labour Party conference. So I'm lucky I'm going travelling.
I'm just interested.
I couldn't bring myself to come anyway.
I agree with you. I've never been to a party conference, but having never gone, it's one off the bucket list. It wasn't on the bucket list, but I can now write it on and then tick it off.
They're on my bucket list.
I've done it. I'm just interested to see what it's like. What's the vibe? What are these people really like in the flesh when they're not being intermediated by media and other people, actually chatting to a few MPs or political advisors or all these people that hang around doing all this stuff. What are they like? I don't know. And so it's an opportunity to kind of just find out, I suppose.
Well, the best teachers ask the best questions. So I suppose that's what you'll be doing when you get there. I hope to get a selfie of you guys wearing ties, Chris. I expect clean shaven, short back and sides, stiff upper lip and all that. Speaking the Queen's English.
It's funny you say that. So we had to submit a photo for our ID, James. Did you have to submit a photo as part of the application process?
Maybe. I just done a new passport, so I just used that, to be honest.
Oh, okay. So I just wore a Hawaiian shirt and was unshaven. I'm not sure if that's affected my application. But yeah, probably the only person who in their ID pass is wearing a Hawaiian shirt, long hair, and a slightly unshaven. But there we go. We shall see if I smarten up. I'll leave that as a surprise.
Well, you'll have to pitch up dressed like that, otherwise they won't recognize you.
That's true, actually. And it was an orange Hawaiian shirt, actually, which I thought I thought it had to be an orange Hawaiian shirt, seeing it was going to be on the Bitcoin Policy UK stand. So
your orange flashing sign that says "Save the world, save." You're going to draw a crowd for sure.
The thing that I've got to decide is, somebody onboarded a bespoke tailor in the City of London 3 or 4 months ago, and I never had a bespoke suit. So as soon as they've been onboarded to accept Bitcoin, I thought, right, I'm going to go and get one. So I went to see them and I got measured up and I've ordered the suit and I'm fingers crossed. Been back for second fitting, and hopefully next week, the week before the Labour Party conference, anyway, it should be available. My big question is, so I'll have this new kind of bespoke Bitcoin suit, which has got a stitched kind of orange bee on the lapel, and it's got a custom lining with sort of with references to the Matrix and white rabbits and stuff. And I'm really looking forward to it as a fun thing generally. What I'm wondering is whether that's suitable for a socialist political conference, or whether I'd be better in a Hawaiian shirt than something that looks like it cost a Bitcoin. So I don't know. I think I'm probably just going to tone it down and just wear a blue suit.
Your one chance to show off your new outfit, and you're not going to take it.
Well, it might not. I just think it might not fit the. So what do you think, Chris? Do you think? I just think it might be a bit.
Bring it along anyway. Maybe
we can assess it. We can assess it.
Yeah, keep it behind the stand,
and then I'll get changed.
See what the vibe is.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll do that.
I'll do the same with my Hawaiian shirt.
Okay. Okay.
It might need jazzing. The place might just need a bit more Shazam. We might need to be that
We
Shazam.
might be it.
Yeah. There's always a cocktail party at one of these things, so I'm sure you'll be you'll be
there,
able
to
to
go with it,
pull out a little bit of flash and show your stuff there. Okay, so we're talking Labour Party, which is obviously politics and the mood. Does politics in the UK affect people's perception of Bitcoin? The US has just gone through this really interesting phase where I was listening to a lady working in a Bitcoin tech company, and she said under the previous administration, she didn't think they would survive another year or two. The sort of clampdown, debanking, whatever they call it, choke point 2.0 was in full swing. Suddenly they have a change in administration, and everything seems to change as far as government view of Bitcoin. Now, how that's changed the view of the man in the street, I don't know so much in the US. What is it like in the UK? Is it correlated? Is it a number go up, gets people talking? Is it what politicians say? I think I've asked my question.
Yeah, I mean, in terms... Sorry, Simon, did you want to go first?
Well, I was just going to say, maybe I think where inflation and everything most really very obviously getting more expensive, and that probably is making the pitch for Bitcoin and for, I know we talked about not going in hard and scaring people off, but it's much more obvious for people that there is a problem when things are getting so much more expensive each year. So I think it does loosen things up, greases the wheels on making it easier to approach people, and they get it a little bit quicker than they would have done otherwise. If we were, it's already harder, I suppose, in Western countries where the currencies are relatively more stable. I suppose it's easier for countries to get in Venezuela and Argentina and stuff, where governments are, well, I don't know about more corrupt, because they're corrupt everywhere, but it makes it easier. I think unfortunately, the harder life gets for people, Bitcoin can be more easily seen as an escape route, an escape hatch for people. That's my idea anyway.
Yeah, for me, I mean, if we zoom out and look at sort of look at what's happening at a macro level at the UK, not just at Bitcoin, the current government seem to be strangling businesses. They're not encouraging people to start up businesses. There's no appetite, it appears, for new businesses, new things. We talked about innovators. The current Labour government couldn't be more opposite to being innovating in terms of how to drive growth and more money to the UK. Quite the opposite. So I don't think it's a Bitcoin specific thing. I think you just zoom out and just go, the UK government just is not business friendly. The ultimate goal would to the UK government to be a state that is Bitcoin friendly for me, that makes it attractive for not just all businesses, but also Bitcoin businesses to exist or to move to the UK because they are Bitcoin friendly. Now, Rishi Sunak, who was our chancellor a while ago on the previous government, he talked about being crypto friendly, but nothing materialized of that. That was all just hot air. So we've seen nothing to sort of draw Bitcoiners to the UK or keep Bitcoiners to the UK. Now, for me, this is a problem. Again, zooming out, the UK government don't seem to be keeping people who generate wealth or who are wealthy. Quite the opposite seems to be happening. We're seeing people start to move away people have been moving away from the UK for ages, but that seems to be accelerating now because of ridiculous tax rates that they imposing and they're proposing. And I know of people who have moved their businesses and who have moved out of the UK because of it. And for me, that includes Bitcoiners in the space. So it's not just a Bitcoin thing; it's a macro thing.
Simon just stuck his head there, for example.
Yeah. I'm going next week. We're leaving, and that's been a long time coming, and that's been from watching what's happening to the country, a slow descent in of never anything. It's never seems to be getting better. It seems to be continually just a slow creep downwards. From everything from potholes in the roads to heavier and heavier taxation and regulation, and not encouraging innovation and businesses. And there's still nice places to live in the UK. It's just a general. You want to live in a place that's got a positive kind of feel to it, and a bit of energy and positivity. That was the case, I think, 20 years or so ago.
Put it the other way. Somewhere that's on the up, Simon. Somewhere that's on the up. But at the moment, the UK feels like it's, as you said, I would agree, it's on the decline down, as opposed to being on the up. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think. I'm gonna. I mean, our purpose for leaving is to travel around and try and find somewhere that is feels like home, feels like somewhere we want to stay. It may be that we go all around the world and then find that perhaps the UK was the best place for us in the end, and maybe it will be. I certainly will miss the community and that here, because the Bitcoin community certainly has been a life-changing thing for me in the last few years. So that would be sad, but I'm going to stay deeply connected to it and keep doing the things that I do, but remotely. And we'll see where that takes us. But I think it's a trend that we see all the time. But Bitcoiners, once they've accumulated a little bit of wealth, are thinking, I'm going to do something with my life, but I don't really want to do it in this country. And that's a problem, that people that have wealth, the first thing they want to do is get out of the country and not stay here, and because government's making it harder for businesses to start up. Peter McCormack talks about his cafe in Bedford, about how there's so much. He just opened a coffee shop, and there's so much red tape and barriers that the government put up in front of you just to try and bring a bit of wealth and innovation to the area. So it's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, what I would just say, whilst agreeing with what Chris was saying, I would sort of like to extend it and say it feels like a deeper malaise. It's about the nation. It's not specifically about the government. I mean, I'm not going to sing the praises of the existing socialist government, don't get me wrong, right? However, we mentioned Rishi Sunak, and frankly, they were just as bad. I mean, there was no innovation in the Conservative Party for, 15 years. I mean, we could debate Brexit, but I don't want to get onto that, right? That was actually quite radical, which was one thing that I could single out that was a bit different. Whichever way it went, we can put that to one side. But generally, their performance in government was highly not innovative. And so it's a deeper malaise that runs through the entire institution of the state that then has this, and that includes the money, of course, right, that then has this depressing and downward push on anyone who's trying to survive or live a bit better, or God forbid, start a business and be an innovator and become wealthy and provide jobs to others. There's just this constant drag, and it's not just this government and policies that, many policies that have only been floated, in fact, and we don't even know whether they're being talked about, whether it's just the media who are spinning these stories or whether they're actually being thought about. In the end, those are kind of just moments in time, and that if they did implement them, they'll have a more negative effect on the whole thing. But if everything else was okay and kind of on the up, to use Chris's phrase, then they could implement those policies, and it probably wouldn't reverse it. It wouldn't turn it in. It wouldn't go from going on the up to going on the decline just because of 2 or 3 tax policies in one budget. It's a much deeper thing than that, and it spans all of the major political parties, the entire political infrastructure, and the entire institutional and regulatory infrastructure in the UK. Is my view, which includes the money. Yeah.
And it's probably safe to say it seems to include a large part of the Western world. We're hearing these same sort of complaints coming from, mainland Europe. The US has their fair share of complaint about the size of the nation state and this thing that just gets bigger and bigger. Taxes get higher. So it's kind of strange that it seems to be this wave sweeping the planet at the moment. You hear the odd beacon of light, so to speak. I think Milei in Argentina seems to be the one person, surprisingly, who actually is doing what he said he would do. And he seems to be showing that reversing the socialist trend and deregulating, reducing the size of the state is having huge positive gains on his country. But beyond the nation state, we also have these other organizations, IMF, World Bank, BIS, World Economic Forum. It all kind of seems connected. What do you guys think is driving this? I mean, from talking to guys from grassroots level to small business to larger corporates and now to government in the next few weeks, what is your sense? Do people seem confused as to what's going on? Is it a finger-pointing exercise? It's a them versus us, which is what politicians famously like to do. But do people feel it as a growing problem, as you've just said, James? It's not just the current political party and some bad policies.
Go on, Chris.
No, you spoke first, Simon. You go.
No, I don't know.
Do they feel it as a general problem? I think this lines up with what Simon was saying and James was saying. I think it's definitely a bigger thing. I think there's general unrest in the UK, which I think is mirrored across the UK, and we all know as Bitcoiners why that is. It's because there's bad money, and because of bad money, people get greedy. You get debt. I'm going to reference Joe Bryan's "What's the Problem" video, and I think that illustrates beautifully what's happening in the UK and across the globe. So if any of your listeners haven't seen it, check out what'stheproblem.com or sats versus fiat.org.
Yeah, it's creating new what'stheproblem.org. So no apostrophe between the T and the S. What'stheproblem.org. Yeah.
So check out, set aside 40 minutes to watch that video, and it sort of illustrates perfectly from my perspective and also many other Bitcoiners' perspectives what's happening with the world and why things seem to be on this downward trend. So yeah, I think it's a bigger thing than local governments. That governments, as James says, it's bad money. Everything's just going to pot because of bad money, essentially. God, this is a cheery podcast. Sorry, Gavin. We started off saying we're not really touching the sides with onboarding businesses, and now we're talking about how everything's in decline. Simon's pissing off around the world because he can't stand the UK. So we need some positiveness.
But the thing is, it was interesting what Simon said. I'm going off. Maybe we'll go around the world and we'll end up coming back to Britain because we feel that actually overall, compared with everything else, it's not that bad. And so the interesting thing about that is, well, that's a very positive thing if that ends up, because what you're saying is that, you've gone around the world. You've had some great experiences while you do it. You've looked at lots of different ways of doing it. And what you kind of come back with a new vision where you're kind of choosing it rather than feeling burdened with it, if that were to happen, right? And whereas when you go away, you think, well, okay, there are all these other places. I've often thought that I would sacrifice the level of economic development that I lived, of the economy in the nation that I lived in, for that sense of it being on the up. So to live in an improving place, even if it may be poorer. But then, maybe when you travel around these places and you see, actually, when I want my luxury food from this particular supermarket, that doesn't exist. Basically, in a poorer country, you live on the food that is produced within however many square miles of where you are. And so there are things that we probably take for granted that are still perfectly functional in the UK. And it'd be interesting to actually do what you're doing, Simon, which is a kind of innovator's thing. Go and try and see.
Yeah.
And we really like to learn off you. Obviously, your tastes, priorities, and values will be slightly different from ours, but it'd be interesting to learn what you do experience in that journey, and what thoughts how it makes you reappraise the UK.
It's going to be an interesting learning experience for all of us, and I think, we'll see how it goes. I'm quite positive about it. People keep saying to me, "Oh God, you must be so excited," but there is a big factor of it that we're leaving behind now, and our life isn't terrible here. So it's mixed feelings of going away for an unknown amount of time. We're sort of putting a 2-year sort of limit on the travel. We may not last that long because we may think, I'm sick of living out of a bag and hopping from place to place after a year, or even less, even perhaps. But Bitcoin's given us that freedom to be able to at least do it and try it and see what happens, and through meeting other Bitcoiners with a lot of the things that might be in our head as opposition to it, like the kids' education, the homeschooling has come into it through meeting other Bitcoiners, and a lot of our worries or opposition to it were answered through the last few years of the having a new set of friends, I suppose, through Bitcoin. There's a lot more open-minded people. It just seemed that there was no reason why we couldn't or shouldn't do it. So it's I've worked my last possibly my last fiat day last Thursday, it's been a long time in Bitcoin to finally get to that point where maybe I can just be fully focused on Bitcoin now and not have to worry about getting up early in the morning and going to a place of work every day. So it's gonna be different, and probably psychologically quite difficult reversing that flow of stacking Bitcoin to now actually switching the valve to actually I've got to live on it now. That psychologically might be difficult. I'm gonna pay myself for the first time next week, so I'll see how we go.
Well, I think that's an amazing story right there. Is that what Bitcoin has done for you? It's put you in a position where you can now decide you're going to just move around a bit. You've got some freedom you may not have had otherwise, and you have opportunity, and off you're going to go. And look forward to the adventure. You don't know what next week will bring or next year, but you certainly are fortunate enough to be able to do something that many people either won't do or can't do. I think very few people really get the chance to make their mind up themselves. They're not being chased out of the country by persecution or government or something. They get to sit back calmly over a beer, think about this, and decide this sounds like a great idea. I want to give it a crack.
Yeah, a lot of people are trapped within the country, and they certainly don't have the funds or the even if they do have the funds, sometimes it's having the passports to be able to leave the country. We're lucky, and I've got an Australian passport, and but that gives us the ability to maybe stay there if we want as well, and travel around. So it's going to be interesting. And I think we're going to learn a lot of lessons, and I'm going to write about what we do and what we learn along the way. I've started a newsletter to document it all, I suppose, and you can find that at the exitnode.com is the website. If you go to that and people stick their email addresses in and sign up for that, I'm going to hopefully document as much of the learning process through a Bitcoin lens. Traveling with a family, I think, should be fairly interesting to people, hopefully.
Well, I'll certainly put that in the show notes, as well as the other links that we mentioned about the Bitcoin policy guys as well. So I will trawl through and get all of that in. We are about an hour and 30 in on the conversation. If guys want to get hold of you, reach out to you, what's the best way? Simon, you just mentioned the newsletter you're going to put out. Any other ways that that we can connect with you?
For me, if they want to find me on Twitter or Nostr, my handle is Hodl Solo on there. Probably in South Africa, I suppose the Bitcoin Events UK is probably a bit less relevant to them. But if people want to reach out and talk about how they can perhaps maybe replicate in South Africa or any other country what we do here and how we tie merchant onboarding together with the community building side of things, we're happy to. We've spoken to people from other countries, New Zealand and Iceland. I think we had a conversation with a long time ago with different countries. We've done a few more as well. So it's always good to be able to share different people's. Everyone's got different tactics and procedures and methods for onboarding stuff. So yeah, people want to reach out to us for anything that we've talked about today. We're always happy to chat with people, and bridgetobitcoin.com is our main website. There's a contact form on there where people can use that and email us, and we'll get back to them. And James and Chris are sure have got other links and things that they'd like to talk about.
Yeah, you can give us a follow on Twitter, or X as it's now called. We're Bridge, the number 2 Bitcoin, Bridge 2 Bitcoin. Same handle on Instagram at Bridge 2 Bitcoin. We're also on Nostr. I won't read out the Nostr key, but just search Bridge 2 Bitcoin on Nostr. So we're on there as well. Just echo what Simon says. Reach out if you have any questions. Coming back to sort of the UK, Freddie New speaks beautifully eloquently about the state of the UK. I don't want to, but I will reference a rival podcaster, so the Peter McCormack. So if you check out the Peter McCormack show number 76, Freddie News on, I think he's been on 2 or 3 times, but show number 76, I think is the most recent one. Here's an interesting quote from that show. Freddie says, so only 17 million, so roughly 25% of the working population, I think, are paying more in taxes than they consume in services. So at the moment, 17% are supporting everyone else. So that's a quote from Freddie New on that show. So that's an interesting perspective of how things are in the UK. But I don't want to finish on a negative, so I'll finish on some positives. So some positives are, do reach out to us, as Simon says. So if you're a Bitcoiner and you're not accepting Bitcoin in your business, if you run your own business or you work in a small business, the next step is to start accepting Bitcoin payments. It's really easy. By doing that, you're supporting the Bitcoin circular economy, the global Bitcoin circular economy. You're moving on from Bitcoin just being a store of value. You're actually starting to use it as a money. That is really, really valuable. If we're not using Bitcoin, it's just digital gold. And yeah, that's great, but it's so much more than that. We know Bitcoin is lots of things to many people, but it's a fantastic global money. So do think about or reach out to us if you're not sure how to do it. Basically, you just need a wallet, and then it's more complicated the bigger the businesses, but we can help you with that. So do consider accepting Bitcoin payments, because normalizing Bitcoin, not evangelizing, I think is really valuable. So wherever you are in the world, if you can have a Bitcoin accepted here sticker on your door in the shop front, to me that just makes it more normal for those laggards or those late adopters or even those normal adopters. It just makes it more normal, less scary. Let's not forget, this is a new technology, and people inherently are just scared of new technology. It's perfectly normal. It's why we're still alive now, because we're cautious. If that cautiousness wasn't there, we probably would have killed ourselves ages ago because we would have taken too many risks. So that hesitancy is normal, and it's a positive when you zoom out. But let's try and normalize it. Let's get some Bitcoin accepted here stickers on as many businesses as possible, so it's just less scary, like the internet is now. Far less scary than it was for many people, like the telephone, like electricity. At one point, electricity was very scary. The motorized car was very scary. People thought that was evil at one point. Lo and behold, why would we use this strange thing that man's created? God's created horses. This is anti-God to use motorized vehicles. Now we've moved on. We're happy using motorized vehicles. Same with Bitcoin. Let's try and normalize it. And also to tie in with Simon, if you haven't got a local meetup, do consider starting a local meetup as well, because there's real value in connecting with Bitcoiners in real life, in the meet space. Most of us came across Bitcoin over the internet, through YouTube, through a medium that wasn't in person. And we get stuck in that for a little while. And maybe we think it's the algorithm that brought us to Bitcoin, is keeping us in this Bitcoin space, which I did for a while. I thought, is Google just feeding me Bitcoin algorithms? But when I got out there and met people, there's huge value in that, because as Simon said, you make friends, you realize that you're not nuts. Maybe you don't think you're nuts now, but also there's a super networking effect. So once you meet Bitcoiners in real life, that super networking effect takes your Bitcoin learning to another level. And also when it comes to Bitcoin and using it and exchanging Bitcoin for goods and services, it takes you up a number of notches, and it just takes you to another place, rather than you just being a Bitcoiner and you having Bitcoin and stacking hard. And I'm not saying there's anything bad with that. That's extremely good, but there's so much more to Bitcoin. So get out, go to your local meetup, meet other Bitcoiners. You never know what's going to happen. You're leaving Bitcoin on the table if you're not doing that, as far as I'm concerned. So go out to your local meetup. If you don't have one, go start one up. You never know who you're going to meet, the friends you're going to make, the contacts, where you're going to end up in the world. Don't forget, this is a new and emerging technology. And you, if you're listening to this podcast, you are at the forefront of this new and emerging technology. And you can play a really interesting part in this, or you can be a passenger, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But you've got a real opportunity now to be at the forefront of this new technology by just reaching out, creating some community, and seeing where it goes. So anyway, as I said before we start recording, Kevin, we could go on and ramble on for ages. Go on, James.
Yeah, I just like to sort of wrap up with with my sort of final comment. So I would say what we didn't cover is that all three of us actually run our local meetup as well. So Simon runs the Northamptonshire meetup, Chris runs the Surrey meetup, and I run the Berkshire meetup, which is just west of London. And my profile on Twitter is and Noster is just that. It's Berkshire Bitcoiners, and the @ is Bitcoinshire. So it's at Bitcoinshire, and so that's me. I don't have any. So I wasn't ever on social media until Bitcoin. It was just what part of the journey of learning for me. Not that Noster is clearly the way forward in this, but I do honour X for a lot of the learning that I've done over the last few years, and the people I've met, but you do have to filter it quite hard. So there's that. And then I also mentioned Bitcoin for Organizations, so the corporate education curriculum. You can go onto the Mi Primer Bitcoin. So that's my first Bitcoin in Spanish, Mi Primer Bitcoin GitHub. Just Google Mi Primer Bitcoin GitHub and it'll come up. And if you look into the repositories, you'll find that there's one for Bitcoin for Organizations. And what you'll see in there today is all of the chapters, but not all of them have been finally published in there. They've all been written. They're just going through the sort of typesetting and final kind of sign-off process before being put in there. And there's some readmes and stuff at the top about how to approach the curriculum. So if anybody who listens into this podcast wants to talk about that or has got any interest in it, then reach out to me or that. I think there's a link in the MPB GitHub where you can send an email as well, and the same for charities. So the three of us set up a charitable trust to help voluntary non-profit and charities in the UK by helping them to onboard to accepting Bitcoin. And in fact, with that one, we don't just do it for free. We actually start giving them Bitcoin. so it's a kind of immediate win. So there's that. What else? I was going to say, oh, yes, conferences. You said at the start, Gavin, conferences. Chris, Bitfest, are you talking at Bitfest or something? I saw you.
Yeah, so Nathan Day has asked if I'd be on a panel, or so I might be on a merchant adoption panel at Bitfest. I know he was also looking for people to join a panel about meetups, so I don't know if that's happening or not. So potentially I might be on a panel at Bitfest.
Yeah, well, that sounds quite interesting because it's a kind of one day Nostr, one day Bitcoin, isn't it, in Manchester in the UK? Is that right?
That's right. I think it's actually over 3 days. I think the Friday is an arts, Bitcoin arts. Right. The Saturday is the Bitcoin day, and there's the third day Nostr. I can't remember which way round it goes. But that's, for those who are interested, that's Bitfest in Manchester in the UK, Friday the 21st of November to Sunday the 23rd. There are a couple of other conferences, aren't there? There's
the BSE Bury St Edmunds, isn't there?
Bury St Edmunds
quite soon.
Yes, I don't know.
Quite a long way from South Africa, though, I think.
Yes,
it is. But Gavin's got a global audience.
Anyway,
Stop dissing Gavin. I'm sure people from all over the globe, including the UK, listen to him. Maybe people will travel to the UK to go to Manchester or the Bury St Edmunds Bitcoin event. So it's possible. I'm not sure when this is being published, Gavin, but if it's published in time, that's on Saturday, the 20th of September. So I'll be there. I don't think I'm speaking, but I'll be there. So do come and see us. James will be. I don't know if you mentioned on this pod. James will be speaking in Oxford.
That day. Unfortunately, I can't go to the conference because I'm doing a lecture at Oxford University actually on Bitcoin. To alumni. So they have this alumni weekend where alumni come back to meet up with each other and attend various intellectually engaging lecture content, around the university. And I'm doing a talk on the history of money and Bitcoin. So I'm quite excited about that because there won't be many Bitcoiners there because they'll all be in Bury St Edmunds. So apart from one or two who I know will be there, the rest of them will just be kind of middle-aged, probably, or just pre-retirement or post or retired people who went to Oxford University back in the day. They're probably lawyers, worked in finance, accounting, you name it. They're generally fairly high up the establishment, so it's going to be quite. I'm really quite excited about that.
I was gutted when the dates came out and there was a clash because I really would have liked to have been a fly in the wall at that, go along and sort of hide in the wings as best as I can, even though I obviously won't physically fit in.
Yeah, so it says it will be live streamed, but I'm guessing that if it is, it will also be recorded. So I'm going to cover that off with them and make sure that it is recorded, it's live streamed, because why would you not, if you're going to go to the effort of live streaming it, why would you not record it? I mean,
that's true. That's true.
And then obviously share it with the Bitcoin community, and you can go take a look. And by the way, you'll find the Berkshire Bitcoiners Nostr ID in the X profile of Bitcoin Shire. Yeah, so again, you can find me, or you can use NIT 105 or something, the thing where you can link names across. What do you think, Simon? Is that not the?
I can't remember.
I can't remember, but yeah. Anyway, if you find Berkshire Bitcoiners, which is at Bitcoin Shire, you can find the NPub there, and you can come across to find us on Nostr.
Cool.
Or just look through the follow list of somebody else. That's always a good way on Nostr is to see if you find one of us or one thing. Look through who
the web of trust. The web of trust.
You'll find others. Yeah.
A couple of things I want to add on to add some more positives, because we talked about decline lots, but I'll add some more positives to finish on. I'm actually hugely positive about the future, even though there seems to be a gradual macro decline. I'm more positive than I've ever been about the future, and my kids' future, and what Bitcoin has brought me. So I'm really excited for what the future beholds, even though there seems to be a general decline with what's happening in the world. I think there's huge upside that's happening. Yeah. I'm really excited for what my kids might be doing, what the future holds for them. The possibilities are endless.
We've just got to turn the corner on the money, haven't we? Before, I agree with you. I'm hugely positive, and it's just you're on this kind of down, and you just don't know how far down it's going to go before it sort of bottoms out and starts to get better and rearrange the world around Bitcoin, basically. But that's the thing. It's quite stressful because you don't know quite how far we're going down before we.
Well, I think that inflection point will be a very gradual inflection point, and I think it'll be quite a slow inflection, which I think is a good thing. I don't think we want a rebound, if you like. But I'm excited for the future. I'm excited for the fact that you've got this podcast, Gavin, because it shares Bitcoin and what's happening across the globe. And it's really fascinating hearing about all the things that other Bitcoiners are doing to further Bitcoin and share Bitcoin with other people who haven't come across Bitcoin before. I think it's great. I'm excited. So thank you for having us on the show, Gavin.
It's a pleasure, guys. It's been amazing listening to you. Now, I think what's really come through in this episode is how much energy and effort each one of you guys are putting in. We spoke a little bit about value for value earlier, and I think what you guys are doing is amazing. You're clearly putting in tons and tons of effort. You get nothing out of it in return beyond just educating, meeting, networking, and just sharing this amazing technology with people. So that is amazing to hear. And I would really love to do a regular broadcast with you guys, once every few months or even once a year, and just catch up on what's happening in the UK. The podcast that I do is pretty South African focused, but it's awesome to just lift our heads out of the scrum every now and again, have a look at what's happening. I can't quite say over the pond, doesn't have the same ring without an American accent, but across the many continents, and hear what you guys are up to. So I would definitely reach out to you guys and try and make this a regular occurrence. It's been so cool to have you guys on the show. Thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for the extra time that you've given to us as well. I would just say that this is probably the first time the links in the show notes will be longer than the transcript of the entire show.
One more link to chuck in there, bitcoinevents.uk. Check out the meetups. So if there are any South Africans coming to visit the UK, which there are lots, do check out what meetups are happening. If you do come and visit the UK, and go and visit one, hopefully it will be at a Bitcoin accepting business, and go meet some UK Bitcoiners, because it's fascinating how we all see Bitcoin in a slightly different way, and there's loads to learn, as I said earlier, when you meet Bitcoiners in real life. So hopefully I'll meet some new South African Bitcoiners soon.
Subscribe to the newsletter, and if you're coming on holiday, absolutely subscribe to the newsletter, so you can plan it out for your holiday.
And just from our side, I would like to add that if anyone is a Bitcoiner and they have not had the experience of going to a store that accepts Bitcoin and paying for something using their Bitcoin wallet, I promise you it is not the same thing as transferring Bitcoin from one wallet to another. It is almost, someone mentioned earlier on, Simon, I think it was you, about those moments where you remember for the rest of your life where you were when that happened. And I promise you, the first time you do a Bitcoin transaction for some sort of product or service in a store and you get given something back is really one of those moments. You will remember that feeling of that little green check mark or whatever you get on your wallet. So it's amazing. So thank you guys for that. I appreciate your time. Wish you well and hope to see you again soon. Have a great Sunday.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers, Gavin.
Cheers.